My journey in finally settling on an enduro bike has been quite a long one, and it's simply because I'm really tall, over 2 meters, which has meant that trying to find a bike big enough has been a real challenge, especially if I've wanted a bike with local support here in South Africa. Well, the good news is that Trailtech Cycles have started to bring KONA brand back into South Africa, and I'm super stoked that they are, because as a brand it is one that I subscribe to, and it comes from a super proud mountain biking heritage. So what were KONA trying to produce here in this KONA Process? Ultimately, they were trying to produce a machine that you could jump on and ride all day, something that wasn't too slack in head angle, that was nice and roomy in the cockpit, but also was playful but stable. What we're looking at here is a full carbon bike except for the chainstays. So all in all, it really is an impressive rig, and was sure to be able to handle some of the bigger hits. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the build that I've gone through and go into a little bit more detail. So in putting this build together, ultimately what I was looking for was reliability, but also having a little proudly South African flavor. With that in mind, I decided to go with line components across much of what you see here, starting up front with the Line AMP35 carbon handlebars. These are at 780 mils in length, that's the longest they make, but the guys were luckily enough, or kind enough rather, to make some spaces for me, so I've pushed them up to 800s, and to secure those spaces on, I've gone with some death grips, locking those onto the bars nice and firm. I've then of course gone with a Line Amp stem. Moving through the bike there, you will also see a Line Contour XL dropper seat post. Now this is at a 170 mil, which is fantastic. Ultimately I'd like to be at around more of the 200 mark, but there's some exciting news that I think towards the end of the year we can expect something a little longer. Then we move down to the wheel set, and this is really exciting. These are the aluminium V2 Amp 30s, and that means that the internal width on these hoops is 30 millimeters, so that means you've got a really nice stable platform. It makes the tread pattern just expand a little bit on the ground as well, which means that your grip is incredible. Looking into the hoops themselves, you'll also see some nice and sturdy Line hubs. We then take a look at the suspension platform and the drivetrain. Up front, I've decided to go with a fork that I know. It's the one that I've been riding for many years on my Paiga Stage Max, and that is of course the RockShox Pike. It's 160 mils in travel, and it is of course a debonair, and I've got 4 tokens in there at the moment. We then move to the rear shock, and we're having a look at the Super Deluxe. I don't think there's much that I can say that hasn't been hyped up enough about this shock, but it is completely blown my mind. I've never ridden anything that is as supple and as stable as this before, that is for sure. We then look at the drivetrain, and I've decided to go with SRAM NX. So I do tend to break the derailleurs fairly often, and replacement on this isn't such a big deal in terms of cost, but it is lightweight, it shifts incredibly cleanly, and I've only been impressed so far. Taking a look at the brakes, I've gone with Guide Ultimates, 200 mil rotors, so I've got some real good stopping power there, and then of course I've gone with the Maxxis tires to keep things nice and grippy. That being said, it's important that when you're out there, you don't want to be dropping any chains, so I've decided to go with the C6 Carbon Series 9 chain guide, and yeah, hopefully it's going to be happy pedaling and no chain drops for me. So obviously there are a number of important considerations when going out there and trying to choose an enduro bike, and strangely enough, how they climb is definitely one of them. So you want to choose a platform that is good under power, that is going to help you through the climbs, and ultimately is going to make for an enjoyable day in the saddle. What I've noticed so far is that this bike just simply never breaks traction. At the same time, it accelerates really nicely on the longer and more gradual climbs. So all in all, pretty impressed with it so far. Well, while it's important that these enduro bikes climb well, the real reason that I got this thing is to help me get more inspired and feel more confident on the descent. So with that in mind, it's time to put this baby to the test, or should I rather say, see how she puts me to the test. Because honestly, from the riding I've done on this bike so far, it's like a brand new sport. It's not even the same sport. So ultimately here, what I'm looking for is stability and control, but maneuverability. And so far, in what I'm feeling, right up front, I've noticed that I've got a lot more room to work with as a taller rider. That's due to the nice reach profile on this bike. But with shorter chainstays, It's also made for really snappy turning, which is refreshing. It does have a fairly long wheelbase, but you really don't feel that here. And oh man, this longer suspension profile through these rock gardens is a complete game changer. What rock gardens? Oh my word. This bike doing the business up front. Super deluxe, just bottomless. Unbelievable. Typically I ride with carbon hoops on my marathon bike, and initially thought that these alloy wheels would be a bit flexible, but let me tell you, they're very impressive. I certainly can't feel that flex at all. Another complete game changer here is this braking power. Normally running two 180mm rotors at 200. This is giving me a lot more confidence. It's changing the trail though too, and that I don't have to brake as early as I used to and can kind of just let it flow. Woo! This bike is quick. I definitely feel that I've got a lot to learn on this platform, and it's got to probably be a little bit patient because man, it's just so capable. Man, this thing is an absolute pleasure to ride. It's inspirational, it's confidence inspiring, and it's just unbelievably capable. And now we've had a bit of a look at the climbing and the descending, but let's dive into the numbers a little bit. We're going to start off up front with the head angle. This sits at 66 degrees. Now, that's not considered super slack, but it's also not considered really steep. It's kind of in the middle. But when you look at the overall wheelbase of the bike at 1258, it makes a lot of sense, especially taking into account the fact that the chainstays sitting at 425, which is typically seen as short, but with something at a 510 reach profile, it makes a lot of sense. If they went longer, then no doubt it would have been a little bit more difficult to manage and turn on the trails. But overall, this thing has completely blown my mind. Again, this is the first real enduro bike that I've ridden, and if this is a taste of what's to come, then I cannot wait to get on this thing every single day. Well, yeah, I hope you're inspired by this episode, folks. I mean, I'm not a pinner. I'm someone that's learning. I'm looking to draw confidence from this new platform, and if you're like-minded and looking for some great enduro riding options, then get in touch with the Trail Tech guys. They're certainly a friendly bunch. But yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications so you don't miss a beat. Until next time we see you, stay safe, and it's adios for now.